There were 40 people in that room. Clients, partners, family friends. My sister stood up. She tapped her glass.
You honestly
The
thought
room
that would
went
stop
quiet.
me?
Then she looked directly at me.
You have no
and
idea
said I
what's
was
coming
not built
next.
for this. She said it into a microphone. My father was
I don't
sitting
care
6
what you
feet
think.
away. He
Do
nodded
exactly
and smiled.
as I say.
I looked at him.
No
I waited 1
arguments,
second.
no
He
hesitations.
said nothing. I picked up my bag. I walked to his chair.
I think
placed
you'll
his
find
birthday gift in
everything
front
is
of
in
him.
order.
I said, "Happy birthday, Dad." Then I walked out into the cold October air. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel the entire drive home. But I knew exactly what I was going to do next. She called me worthless in front of 40 people. At a party she planned. In a room full of people whose trust one had spent 10 years earning. If you have ever built something real and watched someone else take the credit, you know how that sits in your body. Subscribe. This story is one of the most satisfying endings I have ever told. I do not want you to miss it. My name is Rachel Voss. I own a furniture and design software company in Chattanooga, Tennessee. 12 years ago, I was 19 years old. I was sweeping sawdust off the floor of my father's cabinetry shop. The shop sat on a quiet side street near the river. It had 2 employees and 1 second-hand table saw. My father, Gene, started it 30 years ago. It barely paid the mortgage most months, but Gene was proud of it. He was proud the way men are proud of things that survive by sheer stubbornness. I grew up in that shop. I learned to measure before I cut. I learned what real work feels like in your hands. My sister Dana did not grow up in the shop. Dana got perfect grades. She earned a scholarship to a business university up north. At Sunday dinners, Gene talked about Dana the way some fathers talk about a winning team. Like her achievements were something that belonged to him too. I was the one who stayed. I worked the shop after school. I enrolled in a regional technical college. I studied business software and operations. Dana called home a few times a year and told me I was limiting myself. I said thank you and went back to work. There's one thing you should know about me. I keep a piece of scarred walnut wood on my desk. It came from the very first cabinet I built in Gene's shop when I was 16. One corner is burned from a sanding mistake I made that first week. I never fixed it. It sits there every single day where I can see it. It reminds me where I started and exactly how I got here. In my final year of college, I built something. A production scheduling and client management tool. Designed for small furniture and trade businesses. Nothing flashy. Just a piece of software that solved a real problem for people doing real work. I tested it in Gene's shop first. He looked at the screen for a while and said it was a nice project. Then 3 businesses on the same street started paying for licenses. Gene came to my workbench one evening. He said, "Maybe there is something to this after all." I held on to those words for years longer than I should have. Over the next 5 years, I expanded the software. I brought on developers. The client base grew from local shops to regional contractors, then to national home goods brands. 5 years in, Voss Workshop Solutions crossed $1 million in annual revenue. The old cabinetry shop was now a real technology company. What nobody in that room knew was that the structure holding all of it together had been built quietly and carefully, entirely by me, over years, and it did not belong to them the way they thought it did. That is when Dana came home. 5 years at a consulting firm in Boston. She arrived in October with rolling luggage and a wide smile. At Sunday dinner, she announced it was time to contribute to the family legacy. Gene stood up and hugged her. I sat still and kept eating. Within a month, Dana was named co-CEO. No experience in trade software. No background in client operations. No understanding of the product. Her title rested on her MBA and our father's pride. I kept running product development and client relationships. Dana took over marketing and external communications. On paper that sounded fair. It did not stay fair. Within a year, Dana was the public face of the company. She spoke at regional business events. She was featured in a Tennessee business magazine. Her photo was on the front. Inside the article, she described our product innovations in detail. Innovations my team had spent 18 months building. Not hers. Mine. I read that article at my desk. I said nothing. Then meetings started disappearing from my calendar. One at a time. Slowly. Decisions that affected my team arrived as announcements. Not conversations. Not questions. Just announcements. One afternoon, I discovered a major client contract had been renegotiated. I found out because the client emailed me to confirm the new terms. Nobody had told me the conversation was happening. I brought it up with Dana that same day. She looked at me and said, "We handled it. It is fine. You focus on the technical side." I drove home that evening, and my jaw stayed tight the entire way. I want to be honest about something. Dana was not purely calculating. She was afraid. She came home to a company that had grown far beyond anything she expected. She walked into a room where the real power was already established, and the person holding it was the sister she had spent years dismissing. Her fear made her move faster and harder than she should have. Jean's 60th birthday. Late October. Dana planned every detail. She booked a private dining room at the most expensive restaurant in downtown Chattanooga. 40 guests. Clients. Business contacts. Family friends. My mother was there too, seated near the end of the table. She had been quiet all evening. She kept glancing at me between courses like she knew something was wrong but could not name it. When I arrived, Dana looked at my dress and said quietly, "You could have tried a little harder. These are important people." I smiled and went to greet the guests. Halfway through dinner, Dana stood and tapped her glass. The room settled. She said the company was entering a new phase of leadership. She said the board had agreed that unified direction was necessary. Then she looked at me across the table. She said some people are better suited to backroom technical work than to leadership. She said I had done an adequate job with the original systems. She said the company needed vision now. Then she said it. Clearly. No hesitation. She said I was simply not built for this level of business. I looked at Jean. He was nodding. He was smiling. I looked at my mother. She was staring down at her plate. Her hands were pressed flat against the tablecloth, trembling slightly. She said nothing. I waited one full second. Nobody spoke. I need to pause here. Has anyone ever treated your work like it was invisible? Like what you built did not count because it did not look the way they expected? Tell me in the comments. I stood up slowly. I picked up my bag. I walked to Jean's chair. I placed his wrapped birthday gift on the table in front of him. I said, "Happy birthday, Dad." Then I walked out of the restaurant. The October air was cold and sharp. I got into my car. I sat there for a moment before I started the engine. My hands were shaking on the wheel. Not from fear. From something older and deeper than fear. 10 years of early mornings. 10 years of missed events. 10 years of building something real while they applauded someone else. I drove home. I sat down at my desk. Around 2 in the morning I stopped typing. I just sat there in the dark. Quiet. Thinking about the magazine article with Dana's name on it. Thinking about the way Jean smiled when she called me worthless. Thinking about my mother's hands pressed flat on the tablecloth. And I thought for about 10 minutes that maybe I really had misread all of it. Maybe I really was just the technical one. Maybe adequate was accurate. Maybe 10 years of work was exactly what they said it was. I sat with that long enough for it to feel real. Then I looked at the piece of scarred walnut wood on my desk. I opened my files and kept going. By 4 in the morning the emails were sent. The calls were made. The filing that needed to expire had expired. The filing that needed to be submitted had been submitted. They had no idea what was coming. I arrived at the office before sunrise. I made coffee. I pulled up my documents. I sat at the head of the conference table and waited. Jean and Dana walked in together at 9 o'clock. They were both smiling. The smile stopped when they saw me. Dana said, "What are you doing here?" Not a question. A statement with an edge under it. I said we needed to discuss the company's future. My voice was flat. I had no interest in a scene. I pulled up the first document on the screen. The share structure. When Voss Workshop Solutions was incorporated, the shares were split equally among Jean and both daughters. But years earlier, when the company was still struggling to scale, Jean had come to Rachel privately. He needed her to stay. He needed her technical work to keep the company alive. He offered her an additional block of shares. He signed the paperwork himself. He called it her reward for everything she was building. He meant it at the time. He simply stopped meaning it when Dana came home with an MBA and a confident smile. Rachel now held 51%. The color left Jean's face. Second document. The core software. The platform driving 80% of company revenue. It was not owned by Voss Workshop Solutions. It had never been owned by Voss Workshop Solutions. It belonged to a separate LLC Rachel had established years earlier. The company had been running on a licensing agreement. That agreement expired at midnight. Rachel had chosen not to renew it. Dana's hand moved to the table. She steadied herself. Third, the email screen. The night before, Rachel had contacted every major client. Most of their contracts contained loyalty clauses tied directly to her. By 9 that morning, dozens had responded. Many had already triggered termination clauses. Fourth, the developers. Senior staff were employed by Rachel's LLC, not by Voss Workshop Solutions. Before sunrise, they had each accepted positions at her new venture. The room was completely silent. Dana said, "You planned all of this." Her voice was quiet, unsteady. Rachel said, "I planned it last night. After you told 40 people I was not built for this." Dana started to say something. She stopped. Jean looked at the table. Nobody finished anything. The silence just stayed there and nobody moved to fill it. Rachel gave them 2 options. Option 1. She walks away completely. The software is gone. The clients are gone. The developers are gone. Voss Workshop Solutions becomes an address with a sign on the door. They can explain that to every important person who was at dinner last night. Option 2. Jean and Dana both resign from active roles immediately. They keep their shares as silent partners and receive dividends. Dana gets full severance and a written reference. Rachel takes sole operational control. Jean asked quietly if there was a third option. There was not. The lawyers arrived at 10. The paperwork was signed by noon. Rachel sat alone in the office that afternoon. The Tennessee Ridge was gold and copper in every direction. She looked at it for a long time. The company was fully hers now. It did not feel the way she expected it to feel. The victory was real and solid and documented. The silence around it was just as real. Her mother came by that evening. Her eyes were red. She sat across from Rachel at the kitchen table and asked if it had to end this way. Rachel told her they had not left another option. Her mother nodded. She did not argue. She did not defend Jean or Dana. She also did not say Rachel was right. They sat together without talking for a long while. Then her mother stood up, put on her coat, and left. The conversation had no ending. It just stopped. Rachel sat at the table after she heard the door close, and she did not move for a long time. Over the following year, the company tripled in value. Dana relocated to Atlanta. She took a position at a mid-size firm. Jean retired. The family sees each other at Thanksgiving and Christmas now. It is polite. It is careful. Nobody says the real things out loud. The piece of scarred walnut wood is still on Rachel's desk. Sometimes she looks at photos from the early days. Jean in his work apron. The old table saw. The sawdust on the floor. And she feels the weight of what that family used to be before success changed the way they looked at each other. Then she remembers the restaurant. The microphone. The 40 faces turning toward her. She is still building. The company keeps growing. The work is real and it is hers. The ones who stay quiet and build while everyone else takes the applause are not the ones to dismiss. They already know what the work costs. That means they are the only ones who know what it is truly worth. Tell me something. If this had been you, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have given them one more chance? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story right now, send it to them. They will know why. If this story gave you that feeling, that specific satisfaction of watching the truth finally land, subscribe. Because I have more. Stories about people who were written off and counted out, who then made sure that was the last mistake anyone made. See you in the next one.